Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Long time no see. I've had a pretty busy last few months, obviously with the holidays going on. I got a new job. Just a lot happening where I didn't really have the time or energy to film, if anyone cares why I didn't post for a few months. So there were some videos that I did film, but then ended up not editing, mostly because I just didn't really like the content, and then I didn't really have the energy to go back and edit what I filmed. So anyway, jumping back into filming for this year, hoping to be a little bit better and more consistent about it again. But I wanted to start off the year with just kind of 2021 reading, year in review, the best and worst books that I read, because there are a lot of books that I didn't get to talk about because I wasn't filming at the time. So let's jump into it. So I read 86 books in 2021, which was short of my goal of 100 books, which I did meet last year, 2020. And then 2019, I started like middle of the year with Goodreads. So at that point, I wasn't really sure how many books I was reading every year. So I'm hoping 100 is a realistic goal for me because I made it again for this year. So let's talk about the 86 books that I did read. Right off the bat, I'm sitting in front of my computer so I can pull up my Goodreads and see all the books that I read. Right off the bat, I can say that the end of the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children series was not my favorite, and definitely started off the year a little rocky with those books. To me, the story just kind of fell apart. The first book I felt like was so original and so action-packed, and then it was kind of downhill from there. The second one I really didn't enjoy at all. The third one I thought at least wrapped things up well. And then the next 3 books in the series I did not enjoy. But again, started off the year reading those and not loving it. Another book that I really didn't enjoy reading last year that I was very surprised, because it's a book that you're gonna know when you hear it, has gotten a lot of hype, The Tattooist of Auschwitz. I thought that the book was way too much telling what was happening and not enough showing what was happening, and it had like some time skips and things that to me didn't really make sense, and so I really didn't enjoy that book. I believe I saw somewhere that it started out getting written as like a film script that eventually got turned into a book, and that made a little bit more sense to me, but overall did not enjoy. Another like bottom of the stack book for me was Witches Steeped in Gold by Sienon Smart. I'm probably saying that first name wrong. So when I started out the book, I was like, maybe it's just not clicking. This is not my favorite book, but it's not going to be that bad. And then when I was like actually trying to review the book, I realized there was nothing that I had enjoyed about it. I was really excited for it because the book is supposed to feature 2 women of color. It's a fantasy book that's supposed to be in a kingdom that's like modeled after Jamaica. The girls are supposed to be 2 witches who are supposed to be like pitted against each other but end up joining forces. They're supposed to be LGBT rep. And for me, the major downfall of the book that really set me off was the world building. It was one of those kinds of books where the author really just throws you into it and you kind of have to like pick up as you go. But she was giving, I felt, too much information to pick up while you go and no explanation for it. So it ended up just being really confusing. The characters in this book were also really flat. There's 2 perspectives and it goes between them during chapters. And the characters are so bland. It was actually hard to tell which character was talking because neither one of them had a really independent voice. And the book is fairly chunky. I believe it's over 500 pages, and a lot of what happens in the book is not necessary. Like, it's just going on and on and on, but nothing is really happening. As I was reading it, I like didn't have a bookmark, and I realized I had accidentally skipped like 2 chapters. But it like I hadn't even noticed that I had skipped chapters. Like, I just kept reading and I didn't miss anything. Like, when I went back to read the chapters, it didn't impact my understanding of the story at all. The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones was another disappointing read for me. I read it more in October for like spooky Halloween read. And again, it was one of those things, it was just really confusing. It was one of those books where if someone saw me reading it and asked me what I thought or like what it was about, I would start trying to explain it to them and would just get like really weird looks because it doesn't make sense and it was really hard to explain. I can try now, for example. It's about this group of Native American boys who kind of end up, I guess, getting haunted by this deer-headed woman. This is going to be like big spoilers if you're interested in this book. But what happened was one winter they were hunting. I don't think it was that it was hunting out of season, but it was in a place they weren't supposed to be hunting. And they killed a lot of elk that they didn't need to kill. Like it was like 4 boys and they were in one truck and they killed like 9 elk or something. It was like they couldn't even have used all of the elk for anything. And one of the elk was like a young like cow, and they cleaned that one because they convinced the game warden to let them take that one. The guy who was cleaning that one realized that she was pregnant and buried the baby elk, I believe. Now it's also been a while, so I'm kind of worried I might also just be messing things up, but I'm getting the gist of it. I'm confident in that. Anyway, the boys all end up pretty much getting haunted by this deer-headed woman, which is the ghost of the female elk that they killed and cleaned, and she is trying to get back to her baby. And at the end of the story, she turns back into an elk. Her baby is like resurrected from its grave, and they go off and are elk together. But also a lot of people have died. And that was that book. The last book that I read in 2021 that I really didn't enjoy is one that, please, no one come at me for this, but it was Dune by Frank Herbert. If anyone doesn't know, I feel like, obviously, with the movie and all of the attention, this book had been really hyped up. I love sci-fi, so I was really excited to read it. But I feel like at the end of the day, this is one of those classics that has me just thinking, why is this a classic? I was talking to my dad about reading it, and he was like, I feel like Dune is one of those books like The Lord of the Rings where it's just really hefty and there's just a lot going on and it's just totally not my thing. And I was like, well, actually, I really enjoy like the Lord of the Rings books. They are hefty and they are dense and there's a lot going on, but I feel like they're at least enjoyable for me to read. Dune was not enjoyable. I felt like it was way too thick for no reason. I can barely even explain what happens in the book at this point. I was trying to read the book before I watched the movie because I'm that person. Like, I want to read the source literature before I see the movie or TV show or whatever, if I can. And now I want to see the movie so I can try to figure out what was happening in the book, because I was pretty lost. And then overall, I was also like unimpressed with the story. Just one, okay, the names like Duncan, Idaho, and Jessica and Paul, I feel like even though it was the 60s, like you could have come up with something better. The culture on this planet is obviously like completely ripped off like Arabian or Middle Eastern culture. Like there's literally Arabic words like dropped in the book that they're trying to pass off as like this alien language or whatever, which is whatever. And yeah, I feel like there wasn't any real value to the story. Again, maybe I'm missing it, and if I watched the movie I would pick up on some things that I'm missing, but I don't get it. I didn't enjoy it. The characters I felt like were flat. I just didn't like it. All of that being said, let's talk about the books that I did really enjoy reading last year. Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson was so good in my opinion. I think that was a book where the world building was nailed, the magic system was completely unique, and she nailed it. The characters were awesome, three-dimensional, loved it. I was really excited toward the end of the year when her new book Vespertine came out. That one was one that I read just like a couple weeks ago. Really enjoyed it because I also thought that book was really good. Again, good world building, unique magic system that like makes sense, is well explained, and good character development. Like, these are some simple things that I want to see in my books. They were also both action driven, like plot driven, so they moved quickly because the characters were always on to the next thing. Crown of Feathers by Nikki Palprieto I thought was also a very good book. That's a series that I really need to get the sequel to so I can keep reading. I believe that one is a trilogy. I read that one, I feel like, pretty early on in the year last year. But it is a really, I think it's a pretty good book about sisters and like familial conflict. My only critique of it, I think, would be that the sister who's like the villain sister has, I don't know, like, you don't feel bad for her. She has no redeeming qualities. She's just like 100% evil. And I do prefer a villain who's a little bit more nuanced than that. But I think the story was enough to like help me look past that like kind of small flaw. Sweet and Bitter Magic by Adrienne Tooley I loved. I am a sucker for a romance where one of the people is really like cold and distant and has all this baggage, and there's this other like really cute, really happy person who somehow like breaks their walls down. It also really buttered my biscuit that this was a YA fantasy, and the couple are both like young women. So that book was another just really good for me. Andy Weir's Hail Mary, which was another new release, I thought was also really good. I love how hard his sci-fi is, and how I'm reading a fictional book, but I still feel like I'm learning about science at the same time. And then also I kind of was surprised that in this book he has aliens, because I really didn't see that coming. But I thought it was really cool to like learn, because again, it's an alien culture. Like, it doesn't exist, or maybe it does. But you still feel like you're learning about space and other planets and things like that because of how he is explaining this alien culture. And then one of my this was probably like my favorite, if not like one of my like very like top 3 favorites of books that I read this year, was the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. This book, I kind of feel bad. I convinced my mom to read it, and then she said she didn't love it because I was like, I've read like 80 books this year, and this one is the best. If you don't like horror and you don't like gore, it definitely will be out of your league. My mom enjoys stuff like kind of Stephen King, so I thought she would be okay with it, but this book was even like too much for her. But that was one of the things that I said I really enjoyed about it, because there are some really gruesome moments. I mean, it's about a mother in like the 80s or 90s in, I want to say it's South Carolina, and one of her neighbors is a vampire, and she gets into some really uncomfortable situations as she tries to like take him down, basically. But that was one of the things that I really enjoyed, because I think it takes a lot of skill as an author to write a scene that is so uncomfortably gruesome you can barely sit through, like you can barely stand to read it. So that I think was really good writing. I also did really enjoy how a lot of the book focuses around family. It is like a gory vampire book, whatever, and it can kind of be campy almost at times. But the main theme of the book to me is this mom who is protecting her children, and she has this group of like wonderful female friends, and they all like have each other's back no matter what. And I think that made it also a really successful story. So that is more or less the highs and the lows of my reading in 2021. Looking back on it, it's not a bad year. There were a lot of books that I was mediocre towards, but not as many books as I expected that I really didn't like. And I feel like I had a lot of books to talk about that I did really enjoy. Of course, there are some books that didn't get great reviews that I didn't talk about, or books that got good reviews that I didn't talk about because I don't have time to mention all 86 of the books that I'd read. But those are the ones that stood out to me as really good or really bad. Hoping that 2022 is another wonderful reading year and that this time I can meet my goal again of 100 books. Thank you guys for watching. I'm hoping to see you again really soon. Bye!